Death doesn't check people's passports before striking. This is regardless of who's on the street, who they are, they need to be properly served. I think the frustration we feel at the federal government, certainly it's felt towards us, is when we're not coordinated and we're sort of pointing fingers at each other. This isn't a game of political football. And when there are solutions that are at the 1 yard line, like we have in Toronto, we shouldn't be throwing Hail Marys. This is about getting things across the goal line and really getting some real concrete gains for people that are on the streets, in this case, on the streets of Toronto or the greater Toronto area.
Oh, as the federal immigration minister Mark Miller speaking with me earlier today about the lack of shelter in major Canadian cities for newcomers to Canada, including refugees and asylum seekers. It follows calls from 2 Ontario mayors requesting more federal support to open additional shelter spaces for asylum seekers as winter is approaching. That includes the mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, who says the situation in her city is dire. She's asking the federal government for more money and even to open military armories to use as emergency shelters. Plus, the mayor of Brampton, Ontario, west of Toronto, Patrick Brown, has been echoing a similar plea following the death of an asylum seeker last week. Today, Minister Miller did announce the federal government will give $7 million to the Peel region of Ontario, which includes Brampton, to help create a permanent welcome centre. And Olivia Chow, Patrick Brown, both join me, and thank you for taking the time for Power Play on this Friday. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon.
Mayor Chow, let me start with you, Mayor Chow, if I can. What do you want Ottawa to do to help your city?
Well, it would be wonderful to build some affordable housing and support our public transit initiatives because our subway cars are getting old and we need to buy new ones. And the third piece is very important is the refugees that are right now coming in, and we need support to house and shelter the refugees.
Mayor Brown, the death of that asylum seeker outside of a former shelter in the Peel region, which of course is where Brampton is located, how would you characterize that sort of thing and this crisis that we're seeing, bigger picture?
Well, it's heart-wrenching in a country as prosperous as Canada to have someone fleeing adversity come to Canada, for the Canadian dream and end up dying outside of a shelter. So it was harrowing. It's why I was very pointed in my criticism of the lack of federal support. But of course, now that help is on the way, I have a little bit of relief.
Mayor Chow, I know that a homeless camp being cleared out in the city of Toronto today in Kensington Market over some serious public safety concerns. What is your city facing for people who are watching across the country? What do they need to know about what Toronto is going through?
We have 11,000 now, actually, 11,000 people living in homeless shelters, and almost 5,000 of them are refugees. And every night we have over 300 people being turned away because our shelters are all full. And that one of the biggest reasons is because the dramatic increase of refugees coming to our doors, not just in Toronto, but the entire Greater Toronto region. And this is happening to all the big cities across the country. So Mayor Brown and I are not alone in this request that the federal government needs to do 4 things. One is to have a reception center, which they are now doing right by the airport, so that refugees arriving would be able to get the paperwork and be able to process the claims, etc., get a work permit soon, and then so that they could start working. And that reception center will also be able to find them a place to shelter them. Secondly, they need to provide funding for all the municipalities like Toronto or Vancouver or in Brampton, the funds that we are already spending. In Toronto, 5,000 refugees are already in our shelters, and we need to find funds to support these existing ones. And then the new ones that are arriving, we need to find quick ways because our shelters are all full. So there are 2 ways. Number one, open up spaces that are empty right now, whether it's armories or wherever, old hotels that we could purchase to make it happen quickly. And then the second way is very immediate. Provide rent supplement so that we could supplement their income, because some refugees have some money. We just need to supplement, just provide a little bit so that they can then go and rent a place themselves. That's the most dignified way, the fastest way for them to settle. And maybe for a few months, then they could start working, then they could start paying their rent in full.
Mayor Brown, let me ask you about that federal government investment, $7 million into the Peel region to help create a permanent welcome center for refugees and asylum seekers. What does that mean? What's the takeaway there for you?
Well, this was wonderful news. Our shelter system was at 321% capacity. We had 150 people per night sleeping outside, largely asylum claimants. Pre-July, our shelter system was on average 4% used up by asylum claimants. It grew to 68%, and we're overwhelmed. And so the federal support, which was announced today, means not only a welcoming center, which can help really connect refugees, asylum claimants, everyone who may be confused of where to seek help, that ability to do so and assure that immediate shelter. But we're also really increasing our shelter capacity. With the announcement today, we're adding 1,050 new spaces. And so, I had warned the federal government that we were on the verge of a humanitarian disaster. With colder temperatures coming, I was worried there was going to be more fatalities. And with the announcement today, we're able to meet the current crisis. That doesn't mean we're not going to see that this crisis grow with new claims coming. But it was tremendous news, and I give the Minister Miller credit for really stepping up at a time when we were horrified and worried, sick, that we were going to see more fatalities.
Mayor Chow, you've talked about the use. Yeah, go ahead.
It's truly a good news because it's not just the mayors, it's all the people that serve refugees for a longest time said to establish this reception center is the most important piece of the puzzle. Of course, as I said, there are other pieces like that would help a few hundreds, maybe 1,000, 1,500 refugees. But as Mayor Brown have said, his shelter and ours in Toronto, for example, we're 5,000 refugees, and then they are still coming.
You mentioned the use, possibly, Mayor Chow, of military armories as temporary shelters. We know that Canada's Defence Minister, Bill Blair, the Immigration Minister as well, Mark Miller, have said that would not be appropriate because the space is needed for training. You would disagree with that? You think all options need to be on the table?
Well, it's really up to the ministers. They know the armories more than we do, so it's not up to me to say what's appropriate or not. There are other ways to go around it. If the armories, which we've used previously, but for this moment, at this time when the weather is getting cold, if it is not available, then rent supplement is the way to go. Because we've been using rent supplement, and with the Ontario and city government, we have now, we've provided 800, and then by the end of a year, probably close to 2,000 refugees would find housing, permanent housing, and then in a couple of months, they can then pay full rent. So while it's getting cold right now, and I don't want people to be camping out, one could get hypothermia. And that's why we're trying to bring people into the shelter, but we have to have space. And if we could open up some of the space by making sure people have money, just a little bit of top up to rent some kind of apartments or rooms, then it's fast, it's immediate, and it solved the crisis.
Mayor Brown, there also seems to be a little bit of finger pointing going on, or perhaps a bit of the blame game between different levels of government. You're currently obviously the mayor of Brampton, but you have a lot of experience provincially as well as federally. Where does the buck stop when it comes to this issue, do you think?
Well, we all serve the same residents, and so there really shouldn't be any finger pointing. I think we got stuck in a period, and the big city mayor started raising this in July, warning that colder temperatures were going to come, and that the luxury of time that we had in July was quickly evaporating. And I should thank Mayor Chow. She's been very outspoken on this, and that this has really helped our national push for attention that was needed for this asylum claimant crisis. But at the end of the day, I think the challenge in Canada is everything sort of gets downloaded to municipalities, that last resort. And caring for refugees and asylum claimants was never a municipal responsibility. And Mayor Chow mentioned the deficit she's running. We're paying $3.5 million a month in Peel that we don't have to handle this giant increase in federal asylum claimants. But I do believe they get it. I do believe today's announcement is the start of a new relationship on this very challenging topic. And I was very critical last week. I had members of my staff near tears based on what they were seeing, and I'm much more hopeful that the worst case scenarios that we were predicting have now been averted.
Patrick Brown is the mayor of Brampton, Ontario. Olivia Chow, the mayor of Toronto. I know it's busy for both of you. Thanks so much for taking some time on this Friday for Power Play. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.